Hey guys, still there. Welcome back to Wargame. Today I'm looking at Ashen Shadows with the 2.42 version, and today we're looking at the Polish decks. Now they have a lot of transports, so especially infantry tab can look a little bit intimidating, but that is mostly due to the large diversity of transports. Anyway, let's have a look. It starts out with the transports already in the logistics section right here. You can see they have a large assortment of options just for their command infantry alone. Normally, command infantry has about 3 to 5 options. These guys have 9. I'm going to be covering those transports in detail in the infantry tab because that's where they make more sense. As for other command vehicles, we have the Topaz R2M. Nothing special here. Lightly armored APC command vehicle. T-72 M1D. This thing is already pretty heavily armored, especially when you compare that to the 10-point price hike for this particular vehicle. I mean, for just 10 points, you're of course losing out on. Actually, you're not even losing out on stealth, they both have poor stealth. You're getting a lot more frontal armor, a lot more side armor. Top armor still very, very thin, so it's very susceptible to top munitions, be those ATGMs or cluster bombs. And if you don't think that the T-72 M1D is heavily armored enough, you could always go for the Twardy, which gets you 20 frontal armor, 10 side, 4 back and 4 top. And on top of that, you also get a pretty damn punchy gun. 23 AP, 4 HE. I'd say this for a command tank is probably more important, because normally I'd say the command tanks are at greater risk from infantry sneaking up on them. And that's when that 4 HE gun is really going to make short work of the infantry. That's not the only command options they have. They also have the WD-43 and the Scott R3. This one is amphibious, as opposed to those that I have covered previously, with the exception of the Topaz. WD-43 is not amphibious, of course, being a Jeep. So you have a couple of amphibious options, you have some heavily armored options, or a cheap option, beside all of the command infantry transport options there. Other logistics, of course, we have a FOB, we have an MI8 and an MI6. 1500 supplies or 3700, but keep in mind that this thing is very, very large and can be hard to land safely. And then we have the Star 266 transport. Moving on to infantry, and this is where the fun starts. So let's go over the infantry vehicles first. Starting out with the Russo Mac. The Russo Mac is I'd say an LAV variant, but that's probably not doing it justice. What you're looking at here is... Oh, come on. I just cannot touch any of the other deck cards, or the game will switch to that unit. We have a vehicle which has a decent amount of frontal armor and side armor, 6 and 4. 40 kilometer amphibious. Has a Bushmaster 2, which is quite accurate, even when moving, although when moving you are losing out on the accuracy. 5 AP means that you can do damage to pretty much every transport on Blue 4. Not all of them, some of them have 6 or even 10 armor, but most of them you will hurt. And if you can't hurt them with the Bushmaster, you always have the Spike LR2, which does have 25 AP. However, keep in mind that when you are coming up against a transport that has more than 5 armor, it is quite likely to be carrying an APS, which means that that missile is not going to go through, especially if the enemy transports are arriving in groups. Autonomy for this vehicle is very good, 710. Off-road mobility 80, medium optics, road speed of course 150, and it also comes with its own APS. Now, for some reason, you can also get the Russo Mac M1M. Don't get this. The only thing that you're getting is 1 point of frontal armor. The thing that you're losing is the Spike missile, and you're also losing your amphibious capability. So I'd say 1 point of frontal armor and a little bit of side armor is not worth it. Stick to the Russo Mac standard vehicle. Next, Scott 2AM. This thing is a standard wheeled transport with a KPVT machine gun on it, doing 2 AP, and of course the closer you get the more damage it will do. And in case you're dealing with heavily armored threats, you can always fire that RK3 Corsair at them. And that is really going to do some damage. However, again, APS. The APS changes the whole game with regards to HEGMs, and they make it more difficult to go through. Aside from that, another amphibious option, another very fast off-roader, both road speed of course and off-road speed of 95, but unfortunately it only has poor optics, as opposed to the Russo Mac. Scott's 2AP is the cheaper version of the 2AM. For 3 points, you're getting a slightly inferior vehicle, but not even by much. Because the amount of armor is the same, but you don't have an APS and you don't have an ATGM. I'd say if you have more expensive infantry and you don't want to go all out on the Russo Mac, go for the Scott 2AM, because this one still has an APS, which would allow especially the more valuable infantry to get to the front line intact. Next, we have the the SW4T, couple of Norinco 23mm autocannons. Very fast, medium stealth as with most silos. Autonomy is good, and it unfortunately has no armor, but it makes up with that for a little bit of ECM, 20%. Next, a unit that we probably already know, the W3T Sokol. I'm probably butchering that last bit, but my Polish was never very good. The Sokol 23mm autocannon. Let's compare these autocannons side by side. Really? This is what I mean. I need to hover over here, move right, don't touch anything, there we go. This W4T has a little bit more accuracy, 35 versus 15. AP is the same, HE is the same, rate of fire is lower. And the Sokol has a really high rate of fire, but tends to run out of ammo very quickly. Actually, I think, judging by their respective ammo carry, so their ammo count and the rate of fire, that they're both going to run out of ammo pretty much at the same time. Next, MI8T. Nothing really special. Just an MI8T or an MI8 with a couple of 57mm rockets. MI17. This one you bring in case you want bigger rocket pods, because these have 122mm rockets. The difference is accuracy, 15% versus 30%, and 4 HE versus 1 HE. Stabilizer is equally terrible on both, although the Mi-17 has 25% and this has 5. Please don't fire these on the move. These you can sort of get away with it, but this thing has a lot more rounds to waste than the Mi-17 does. Mi-24D then, nothing too special about this. Yak B, a couple of 57mm rockets, a whole load of those, 128, and the Kokon HEGM. I was never a big fan of the Kokon because it's slow, and it's not just slow, but it also lacks in AP. And accuracy, I think it's been buffed a bit, but overall accuracy was never its strong point. That's it for the transports. I might run into some others, but this is really why you have so many different infantry units here. Talking of the infantry itself, this is the Grom. Elite level troops. Heavy tag. Very accurate with their MSBS Radom. They have an AA weapon, the Verba. Pretty good accuracy, and do not let that low HE value fool you. Because you might think, well, it's just 2 HE, I'm never going to shoot down anything. Yeah, you will. You absolutely will, because critical hits really hurt units. And the higher your chances, or the higher your accuracy, the higher your chances for critical hits. There's a detailed table on that. I'm going to link to that down below in the description. And in case you're dealing with vehicles that are not up in the air but right next to you, you have the RPG-16 Delta. 65% accuracy, good range on an RPG, 910 meters. And especially considering that at that range they're still this accurate. And, well, the punch is a little lacking at 19, but you can get the job done with it. And consider that these guys have the heavy tag, meaning that they're going to be far less susceptible to HE damage. That means napalm, HE munitions, as well as suppression damage. Next up, Commandosi. 15-man elite trained squad. Let's compare these guys side by side. You can see the differences in unit profile. The Grom are more of a behind enemy lines team. because they have both that RPG and the Verba. Commandosi don't have the Verba, but they have an FN Maximi, as well as the RPG, which carries a few more rounds, and the AKS-74U, which is stats-wise very comparable to the Radom, with the difference that it's a little bit more stabilized and as such a little bit more useful on the move. These guys are the ones that you call in when you're dealing with enemy infantry. One note, they don't have the heavy tag. These guys do. This is going to keep them alive a little bit longer than the Commandosi, but the Commandosi are a 15-man team. So it's going to be somewhere down the middle who gets to live longer. Next up, Nebysky Bereti. Shock Train Squad. They have the RPG-28. Now, if you're a NATO vehicle, you don't want to see these things up close because they're going to do a lot of damage to you. They have the FB Beryl and the RPK to deal with enemy infantry. This one is CQC, so you can use it in the same building. Shock Train Squad and 15-man squad means that it's going to be quite survivable. No heavy tag, unfortunately. Keep that in mind as you're fighting other infantry. And please make use of your transports. So let's say that you're bringing in the Nebysky Bereti in this vehicle, which I haven't covered yet, the BWP Kalina. You're also getting an autocannon, and not... Actually, I'm not even sure if I can still legally call that an autocannon. This thing is a 24 rate of round a minute rate of fire. Does 11 AP, 1.5 HE, very accurate. Kinetic rounds, so the closer you get, the more damage they do. And they can be used against ground and helicopter targets. These are going to be very powerful in conjunction with the Nebysky Bereti. These will take out vehicles at close range. These will take out, let's say, transports at longer range. They're amphibious. Off-road speed is a little lower than with those wheeled vehicles. Well, that was to be expected. It's a tracked vehicle. And overall, autonomy is good. Amphibious ability, 30 kph. It's a really nice overall vehicle. And it pretty much carries a smaller variant of the automatics gun. This is the Auto, I think it's supposed to say Melara, not Marlara, 60/70. Next, we do have the Nebysky Bereti with the heavy tag. These are going to be slightly more expensive when you compare them to the standard Nebysky. These are 16, these are 22. Their weaponry has slightly changed. The heavies have the RPK-16, which has somehow a slightly higher rate of fire, but not by much, just 20 rounds. You're really not going to notice that. They carry they carry 30 rounds more. And interestingly, despite this being a 545 versus a 762, they do the same amount of suppression damage. I'm not sure if that is something that's supposed to happen, because normally the smaller rounds don't do as much suppression damage. They also have that MSBS Radom, as well as the RPG-7V. This makes them a little bit less effective against enemy transports, although they have slightly higher range. You're looking at a range of 595 versus 700. And in the case of enemy transports, the closer you can get, or tanks in general, the closer you can get, the better. So, I'd say the Nebysky Bereti at this range might be slightly more effective, but they're lacking accuracy and punch. Bring these guys in case you're dealing with enemy infantry. Bring these guys in to tandem with the heavy, but let them do the anti-tank and anti-vehicle warfare. As for transports, they have the exact same options. Next, the Picota. Standard line infantry do come with a very heavy anti-tank weapon though, that RPG-28 that I just covered. The FB Beryl means that it's pretty accurate, not stellar. Decent HE, decent PKM on it, but keep in mind stationary, not a CQC weapon, and it cannot be fired on the move. If you're dealing with enemy infantry in the same building, you're just going to have access to that FB. Transports, one or two new ones, or ones that I haven't covered yet. The BWP-1Z comes with the Corsair HEGM that I covered previous, as well as the 2A28 Grom. I don't think that the Grom always had 14H or 14 AP, but now it does. meaning that it can, well, not quite one-shot enemy vehicles, not tanks, but transports. But the accuracy means that you're going to have to get quite close to do it. BWP-2, Autocannon, as well as a Concourse. The Concourse, again, not great. The Autocannon is mostly useful against suppressing enemy infantry. BWP-2D is... Holy crap, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be there. This thing has 24 frontal armor. That must be a bug. You don't have a transport which costs you 2 points less than a B2P that has 24 armor, frontal and 10 side. That's a bit much. Yeah, I'm gonna have to report this one to Spectre. Okay. Other ones. The PPK Faggot HGM. Don't underestimate these things. I tried to in the campaign and that didn't really work out for my tanks. The Faggot HGM might not look like much, but they're pretty quick. They do quite a lot of damage, and especially if your tanks are out of the APS, then they will notice these hits. Especially considering the fact that they're very cheap. Even if you pick them with, let's say, Topaz, you're only paying 11 points for this combination of ATGMs and vehicle. And that allows you to sprinkle them around the battlefield, always covering the area with ATGMs. Now, they're not the most damage-dealing ATGMs, but the Concourse and other ATGMs might fit that gap. The Concourse does 20 AP versus this one's 16, is slightly more accurate and range is slightly better. 2450 on the Faggot versus 2625 on the Concourse. As for transports, I think I covered all of those. Then we have the PPZR Grom. This is your AA team with the Grom missile. Overall, I'd say it's an okay missile, makes up for it with accuracy, but its range against helos and airplanes is a bit lower. I wonder if they have a Verba team as well. Not so far. Jeez, there's a lot of infantry. No, they don't have a Verba. That's interesting, because that means that the Grom, which is not a dedicated AA team, has a better anti-air missile. Curious. Okay. Anyway, you're paying a lot less for them. You're paying 16 versus 24 points. Not terribly survivable, these Grom, as they are only a 3-man squad. But why the Grom are so much more expensive than the Strala, I'm not too sure about. I mean, yeah, this missile isn't great, but it's just relying on more missiles in the air. This one, for 3 times the price, I'm not sure that's justified. Because with 3 of these guys spread out over the battlefield, I have a pretty good chance of at least landing 1 missile hit. These, not so much. But at this range, you're going to get awfully close to rocket pod range. Whereas these guys might be able to take down a helo before they wipe out the Grom team altogether. So, yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off. Oh, there's one I haven't covered yet, the Promets. Nothing really changed here. Maybe the range a little bit. 1,000 meters against ground, 2275 against airplanes, against helos, 2100 against aircraft. Next is the Sapper Z. RPO Reese. Lots and lots of HE damage. Okay for survivability, but they don't have a heavy tag, and you're going to notice that. They will, however, hope to deal so much damage to the enemy infantry that they not have to worry about return fire too much. I'd say that is your saving grace for this unit. The other option that you have is the standard Sapper Z, and these guys come with a flamethrower. The difference, of course, being that you only have 6 charges of these versus 120 charges of the napalm. And as such, you're going to be able to be around longer with a flamethrower, and they're a 10-man squad instead of 5. Makes them a bit more survivable, and aside from that, they have a shock training instead of a regular training, so these guys are faster to panic and slower to recover from it. These guys are a little bit less likely to panic. Again, no heavy tag. And if they do get panicked, then they're going to be recovering from that faster. Next is the Spado. Shock Train Squad, 10-man squad, 25 AP on the AT weapon, FB Brile, which is more accurate than what I just showed you on the, where are they? The Picota. Picota have 30 accuracy, these have 45, so you're definitely going to notice an improvement against infantry. And for 5 points more, you're getting the shock training versus the regular training and the RPK, which can be used in the same building. These are going to be more effective against enemy infantry than the Picota. Then we have the 2015 version of the Spado. You're paying 4 points more for them. They still have shock training, fortunately. RPG is actually, it has more rockets, so more charges. 805 meters versus 595. AP sacrificed 1 point, but I think we can manage that, especially considering that they have more of them. Aside from that, they also got the new assault rifle, the MSBS Redom, and they got the RPK-16 instead of the RPK. Again, the changes between these two are not too great. Maybe in the next version or versions of Ashen Shadows this is going to be changed, because I think that this might require a bigger change than what it is now. As for their transports, no, I don't see anything that I haven't covered yet. SPG-9D. This is an AT team, fire support team. 16 AP and 3 HE. Keep them sitting back from the other infantry, and they can use that SPG-9D to provide a little bit of fire support. And as such, they can do 3 HE per charge. They only carry 10 of them, so you're going to have to resupply them pretty often. Shock training, not going to panic as much. They are, however, a 5-man squad without heavy, so they're pretty easy to take out. And then finally, we have the Stretchy. Light infantry, I believe is what they're going to be classed as. Well, they're classed as a rifle team, but I'd say light infantry, because they have a weapon that's, well, I'd say it's an ATGM. It sits somewhere in the range between an anti-tank weapon, so like a law, and a longer range ATGM. 22 AP, very accurate. Range is okay, and fortunately it's fire and forget. So even if your guys do take a hit, then they're still going to have that missile hopefully land on the target. Alright, that's it for infantry. Moving on to support, because there are a lot more units to cover here. Two different versions of the howitzer. We still have the Dana and the 2SI. I'm not going to take a stab at pronouncing that second part. Very good accuracy on the Dana, not so much on the 2S1. And aside from that, your mobility on the Dana is far better. There is one advantage that the 2S1 has over the Dana, and that it is not locatable. This thing is. And considering that it is locatable, that means that ELINT sensors will pick it up, and ELINT sensors means SEED. SEED aircraft will target and shut down and effectively kill the Dana. They cannot do that to the 2S1. In case you need a bigger punch, you can go for the 2S7, which has 10 HE compared to the Dana's 7. You are sacrificing a bit of a rate of fire, and you're still locatable, so please turn this weapon off if you're not using it, or the enemy SEED will turn it off for you permanently. Next, let's go over to AA. They have a large assortment of AA options in this deck. Like, a lot. Canada, which I covered previous, has, I think, 3 to 5 AA options. These guys have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's a lot of AA diversity you can get in one deck. Now what you're looking at here is the 42S6 Rhomb Morphe. Pretty much an upgraded variant of the Rhomb. Deals 4 HE, and especially with that high accuracy, you also have a high chance to kill enemy vehicles thanks to critical hits. Mobility is very good. Autonomy comes with that, and it's amphibious. So this thing can go everywhere, not run out of fuel. Carries 6 missiles, so you may need to resupply it a little bit more than you'd like. But if this thing fires and hits, there's a fairly good chance that it will kill either the helicopter or the airplane that it's firing at. Keep in mind, radar guided and locatable as such, so this thing will get taken out by SEED. Oh, my bad, this is not an AA weapon. This is a howitzer. The AHS Crab. Let's compare that to the Dana because that's the closest comparison you have. Rate of fire is better for the Crab. It carries the 3-round burst option. Is locatable just the same as the Dana, but its range is better. Its ammo storage is better, 84 rounds versus 50, and with the same HE value but a better dispersion, this thing is even more effective at taking out precision targets. You are paying for that. You're paying 110 points versus 85, and it's not as mobile as the Dana is. So I'd say bring the Dana a little close to the front line to provide those howitzer targets or the howitzer shells on target faster. The Crab is one of those units that sits closer to your fob, and from there can easily get resupplied. Next, the Amrad. This is the Polish version of the Autonomy. It is a 76mm anti-air, anti-ground, anti-airplane range or gun. 3 HE, radar guided, means locatable. Turn it off just the same as you would with the other weapons. Carries a large amount of ammunition. Can be used in an AA roll thanks to the HE rounds and an AP roll, but it's not as effective as the Autonomy thanks to 12 AP. I think this used to be a little higher. Rate of fire for these things is very high. You're looking at 40 rounds a minute. I don't think that the standard auto used to have that. You're also getting a little bit of armor, but it's not terribly much. This means that even a transport is likely to kill you, so be very careful with the MRAD. First going to go over AA, and then I'll cover the rocket pods. The BRDM-2, nothing too special about this one. It's a nice and cheap AA solution, but its range against airplanes is very lacking. One good thing, it is not locatable. Another good thing, it is very fast. 100 kph off-road, 150 road, 50 amphibious, 750 kilometer autonomy to boot with that. So you're going to be zipping around with these things back into the fob, because they only carry 4 missiles. Not locatable, but fire and forget. In case you need a few more missiles, then you might want to go for this one. Let's see, compare side by side. You're getting a little bit more accuracy when you're sitting still, but less when you're moving. The whole platform is tracked instead of wheeled, so you're getting 60 kph off-road instead of 100. Thanks to that, you're also getting less autonomy and less amphibious speed. You are, however, getting better range on your AA missile, and the HE has gone from 2 to 3. Then we have the Hypnerites. Nothing really special about these, just a 15-point AA truck. Range is workable, but any helicopter worth a damn is going to shoot that thing beyond its AA range. This one, a slightly upgraded version of the standard Hypnerite. This one comes with the Igla S, and these will shoot down the helicopter before the helicopter gets to shoot you. At least most helicopters. Not all of them, because some of them have a range that exceeds that 2975 meter range. HE is very good. Accuracy is HE is not great, but 2 HE is pretty much the standard nowadays with that new 2.42 version of the mod. Accuracy means it's going to be quite likely to get a critical hit, not as likely as some of those 80 percentiles that we've seen before, but still, this thing will definitely do the damage. Now, onto the bigger missiles. Cub M3, 6 HE. Very, very powerful, and if this thing hits your aircraft, then it might be an instant kill, depending on how lucky you are. Range against airplanes is very good, 6,300 meters. It is locatable, and while this is okay, seed is going to shut you down, well, depending on the seed aircraft, at I believe a maximum range of 11 clicks. So try and keep these things offline for as long as possible until an aircraft is pretty much overhead. Not long enough range for you? Pick the Newa. And the Newa is going to give you a range of 7,350 meters, 9 HE, 80% accuracy. You get hit by one of those, good luck surviving that. Now here's the brother of it, side by side. Overall, I don't really see why you'd want to get the more expensive version. Well, yeah, sort of. Off-road speed is better, 65 versus 35. They're both big targets, but this thing is big and has 15 strength and armor. This thing has no armor. So, for a more expensive AA piece, you're getting the same amount of missiles, the same exact stats, less armor, but more speed. That's it. I'd say go with the WZT-1. And that's not all, because we always have more AA. The ZZU-23 4V1, nothing too special, not radar guided, and can also be very effective against enemy infantry. And the Sopol comes with the ZU-23-2, which I just covered on the Hypnorit, as well as the Grom 2. Decent range against helicopters, but the range that the Igla S provides is slightly better. Overall, this thing does a little bit more HE though, 2.5 versus 2. And then back to the rocket artillery with the BM-27. Now this is a top attacking cluster munition. Keep in mind, this thing can also be located. This thing will get shot at by seed aircraft. And if that happens, well, it's 100 points a pop, so make sure you turn these things off if you're not using them. The Grad is also locatable, does HE over a pretty large area. Range is, on the larger maps, going to be a problem. On the smaller maps you probably won't notice. And then we have the RM70. This thing just has twice the assortment of rounds, or twice the amount of rounds, 80 versus 40. Range is the same, accuracy is the same, all stats are the same, but it fires twice, or not, well, not quite twice as fast, but a little faster. 9 rounds a minute, 14 rounds a minute. Moving on to tanks. This is going to be one long deck review. PT-72. A nice multi-role tank. It has 20 frontal armor, 10 side, smoke dischargers, an APS, and a pretty good gun. 65% accurate, 60% on the move, so keep this thing going. 21 AP means that you're going to be penetrating most armor, but not all of it. Some tanks just don't have, or just have 23, 24, even 25 frontal armor. I think the Challenger 2 is the most heavily armored tank in the game currently at 25 frontal armor. If you're coming up against Challenger 2, then with that PT-72, you're just going to be able to penetrate the side armor, but even there you're going to be struggling against a Challenger. PT-76B is something completely different, more of a, I think, cavalry tank. Overall its stats are dreadful. It has very poor amphibious speed, very poor off-road speed. AP at 10 is low, stabilizer is terrible, just don't use it. T-55 AM Merida and the AM2 Merida, these are ambushers. You can see that by the fact that their stabilizer is terrible, but their standard sitting accuracy is pretty good, 55. It's a 100mm gun, which means that if you think of using this thing in an anti-infantry role, I'd say look further, because it only does 3 HE damage instead of 4. And I would very much prefer something like this. If you're looking for, let's say, an anti-infantry tank, then the Jaguar is much better. It's much more suited than the Merida. This one has 3 HE, as I mentioned. This one has 4. This means that this thing can pretty much 3-shot an enemy infantry group. This thing is going to need 4 charges. And while its rate of fire is slightly higher, that 10 frontal armor won't protect you indefinitely. 13 frontal armor won't either, but you're not only getting 3 points more frontal armor, you're also getting 3 points more side armor. And top armor on the Merida is slightly heavier. Not sure why you'd want that on a tank this cheap, but here we are. Other Jaguar is the 40 point. Let's compare those. You're getting a smoke discharger. And aside from that, you're getting a slightly punchier gun and a little bit more frontal armor. And then you have the next upgrade, which is the T-72S. These things used to be, 120 points? Something along those lines. They used to be pretty expensive. Not so much nowadays. Nowadays you're paying 60 points for them, and I think that they're getting quite close to the PT-72 in effectiveness. What they don't have is the smoke discharge and the APS. The overall stats on the gun are similar, but the gun on the PT-72 is better. And this is more traditional T-72 in the sense that it has the ATGM and the machine gun. And yes, this thing also has a machine gun, but I cannot show you. Frontal armor is comparable, although slightly inferior, and same goes for the side, back, and top harness the same. Mobility is pretty good, autonomy is the same, but for 20 points more, I'd say get the PT-76, because that ATGM might look good, but everything and their mother and their dog carries APS, so it's going to be very hard to get those missiles actually landing on targets. Then the T-72 M line. This is the M1 Wilk. Smoke discharger, smoothbore gun. There's really not too much to be said about these things. Good frontal armor, although 15 is a little lacking. It's going to get slight improved with the M2. 18 frontal armor, 20 AP. Accuracy is okay. This thing gets, yeah, they both get smoke discharger. The PT-91 Twardy used to be the big pride of the Polish deck. Now it's been reduced to a 105 point tank, which means that it's sitting somewhere between, I'd say, a medium and a heavy. 23 AP on the gun, 4 HE, good rate of fire, 9 rounds. 20 frontal armor, 10 side. Carries carries smoke, no APS. And of the APS it only carries of the smoke it only carries 2 discharges. If you're going to be using these, try throwing in a couple of tanks, such as the PT-72, which can shoot down enemy HEGMs for it, because the Twardy cannot do it itself. The other one, the upgrade over the PT-91, is the PT-91Z. The difference here is that it has more frontal armor. One more point one more point back and top. And that's about it. Yeah, you're paying 15 points more for 2 points frontal armor. Oh, sorry, and 10% accuracy. Yeah, that's about it. And yeah. And then the PT-16. This is the biggest tank that you can buy for the Polish. This thing has another upgrade over the smoothbore gun that we're seeing on all these tanks, the 2A46M. This one has 24 AP, and that means that you can penetrate all but the Challenger. At least the Challenger 2, that is. You are also going to be able to stand up to the Challenger, as you have 23 frontal armor versus 22. You have an APS, and it is one of the few Polish tanks that has an APS. It seems like the Polish armor is going to be a little bit more reliant on meat shields or on your other transports, such as these. These, with their APS, can also intercept HEGMs that are coming for your tank. So you're going to have to blend a little bit more combined arms. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty good tank, but keep in mind that this thing might come up against an American, M1A2 SEP. It's not going to be a good fight for you. This thing with 26 AP will go right through your frontal armor at maximum range. You, with your 24, can just about do damage to it, but this thing is going to be more likely to hit you. It's going to be more likely to survive thanks to more strength, and overall, I would not try and pick a fight like this. So in case that you are coming up against an Abrams, we're going to have to find another way of dealing with it. Moving on to Reconnaissance. Again, quite a few options here. They have a lot of different vehicles. BTR 40, just your standard ZPTU machine gun, 14.5 millimeters. Does a little bit of AP, mostly HE. These guys can be easily thrown around. They're pretty capable of suppressing enemy infantry. 1.75 HE, suppression's alright. And if you lose one, well, you're barely going to notice. PT-76, stay away. for a recon vehicle is terrible. You're paying 15 points for a 45 kilometer vehicle off-road. That's not what I like my scouts to have. T-55 Recon, this thing is more mobile, good optics, a little bit of armor, but 7 points of frontal armor is not really going to carry you much. BWR 1 Delta. Exceptional optics. This is not a vehicle that you use to go hunting. This is a vehicle that you use as a passive observation platform. It is amphibious, it does have medium stealth, as most of these vehicles do, a little bit of frontal armor, but it's pretty much getting one shot, whichever way you look at it. Turn off the main gun, just use it for that exceptional optics if you want to have something like that in your deck. Next, the Bobber, I think. Another recon vehicle, very good optics, very fast as well. 100 kph off-road, 50 kph amphibious, good autonomy. It's a nice recon vehicle. If you compare that thing side by side to the BTR 40, it is almost as good, but it has some advantages, this BOBR. You're getting very good optics versus good optics. You're getting a little bit more speed, and that amphibious capability is something you cannot find on the BTR 40. So these are more of your throwaway vehicle, I'd say. These are vehicles that just race around the battlefield. And keep in mind, these have AP, these don't. These can actually deal with some armor. With these, you're just going to have to hope that you're doing enough HE damage. Another one, BODM 2. Let's see if there's any advantage. Yeah, not that much. The only advantage that the BODM 2 has over the Bobber is the KPVT. It's the same weapon I just covered. Or, well, not quite the same. But, yeah, stats overall are very comparable. This thing, once again, does have AP. This one does not. Formosa. These guys used to be very good in an anti-infantry role, and I think they still are. They have the HK UMP. Nice to see that one in the game. Pretty good stats, very high rate of fire, and they also have the FN Maximi to deal with enemy infantry, and the GSBO 40 grenade launcher. 60 rounds, 42 rounds a minute rate of fire, does 1.5 HE, no heavy tag, but these guys are elite, which means less likely to panic as such. And overall, I'd say don't put these guys in a town solo, because they're not going to do too well. But if you blend in Formosa with the other infantry units, like the heavier anti-tank variants that you have, who were those again? Spado 15 could do the job. These could go after armor, and your Formosa can go after infantry. You don't really have too many units with a heavy tag. Not on this deck. Nibiski Beretti, maybe. Yeah. It's not ideal, but try just not to send these guys out on their own against enemy infantry and armor. Because the infantry, they will eat alive, but the armor, yeah, not really. Next, the Mi-2RO Reconnaissance unit. 45 point helo, pretty slow for a helicopter these days, 200 kilometers. And with exceptional optics, you're going to be spotting things all over the place. But they are also going to get very easily shot down. Keep them away from the enemy. The other recon helo that you have is the Salamandra. Still a very good platform. Unfortunately, no autocannon. That is such a diverse weapon platform or weapon system, the autocannon, that you're going to notice if you don't have it. And while it does come with a couple of rocket pods and a Kokon, I really like an autocannon on my recon helos. Another reconnaissance jeep, because, well, you can never have too many recon options. The UAZ 469. Nothing too much to be said about this, except for the fact that it's the fastest off-road recon vehicle that I've seen to date in this section. That is 120 kph, no armor whatsoever, no gun, nothing. Throwaway unit. And the other option that you have for recon is the Zwiadochi, the Barile, the RPG-28, and the the PKM. Okay for AP. Shock trained, very good stealth. Use these as either spotter teams or to go behind enemy lines, potentially in tandem with the Grom, because the Grom and these guys make up for a very potent anti-tank, anti-air team together. Vehicles. I don't need to cover most of these as I already have. They have the MID Bison 160. What are you trying to be? Don't look at the unit model. Again, don't look at the unit model. This is a long... I'm not even know how to describe this. It has 5.25 kilometer range. The same level of dispersion at that. So good luck hitting anything. But if you do hit it, it's going to be hurting. 9 HE. Decent amount of frontal armor. Speed is alright. No amphibious capability. Autonomy is lacking. It could be the Polish version of an engineer vehicle. If you compare this to, where is it, the AVRE, I think you're going to see some similarities. Oh, come on. I know you're hiding here somewhere. There you are. This thing has 9 HE, this thing has 8. It's an assault howitzer. When would you use something like that? Because it's not quite a mortar. You have artillery platforms that are more accurate than this thing. I'm going to leave it to you guys. When would you use the MID or the M1D Bison 160? When would that be useful? Oh, actually, no, that's the transport, never mind. This one is the Mortar, nothing too special. The PL-01 is a fire support vehicle. Well, again, don't look at the unit model. It's a fire support vehicle that comes quite close to wanting to be a tank. It doesn't have as much frontal armor as a tank does, 14. Most tanks start at 16 or higher. But it does have a pretty punchy gun, 19 AP. Also comes with an APS and smoke dischargers. I think I've seen this thing around in Armored Warfare, where I believe it's classed as a light tank. That doesn't really do it justice, though. Anyway, this fire support vehicle sits somewhere between a tank and a fire support vehicle in the sense that it has an autocannon. I haven't tested it yet, but it looks promising. Let's see about other units. T-55 Napalm, standard. They have a very, very low amount of ATGM options. Just the 2 Mac 5, which carries the Spike LR2. Already covered that one. And the Concourse. 25 AP, 20, 45, 65 accuracy. Very mobile, pretty mobile. 80 kph. Amphibious, amphibious but slower. And for only 15 points, I'd say get a 2 Mac 5 and start lobbing 25 HE or 25 AP missiles at the target. Helos, Jesus, it never ends with the Polish. They have lots and lots of units in every category. The MRT, MI2, URP. Interesting helo. Autocannon, which is pretty dreadful. Air-to-air missile, Strela 3. Not great either. Especially the range against helicopters could be a problem. Especially if you're coming up against helicopters from NATO, which carry the Mistral, for example. But this thing also has the HJ-10A. It's a long-range ATGM. Quite accurate, just so long as you're not moving around too much, because you're jumping from 35% accuracy to 60. Your AP value is at 24, and that means that you're going to do quite a lot of damage. It is, however, a guided weapon. You're going to have to keep your eye on the target, and that might be a challenge for this helo. The MI2 URS, this one is more capable in an air-to-air role than the other MI2, but it doesn't come with an HGM. And then we have the Sokol, which is pretty much their version of a gunship, but it doesn't do anti-ground warfare, it does air-to-air. It has the Igla V, or Igla 5, depending on how you want to look at that, rocket pods, and an autocannon. Mi-24D, this thing I believe is not available as a helo, but as a transport. This thing is an attack helicopter, the Mi-24W. Very powerful gun, but I wouldn't be surprised if this thing... Yeah, it's not a turret. Well, yeah, sorry, it is a turret. You can see it moving about there. Some of these things are mounted to the hull. This means that they are very capable against infantry, but they don't do a single scrap of damage against armor. They don't have an AP value. You're going to be noticing that, especially if you're trying to take down transports. So if you're trying to take down transports, use the Kokon or the rocket pods. A couple more transport helicopters here. With the exception of the SW4. Hang on, did we see this thing before? No. I don't think so. No. No, that's a new one. This one, the SW4. Rocket pods and an autocannon. Not fantastic. Especially the autocannon is very lackluster. Salamandra. This one does have potential. Good range on the ATGM. 26 AP on that. Stabilizer for an ATGM helicopter is pretty good. 55%. And if you're sitting still, 65. This one is a transport. Yeah, these two are both transports. Alright, onto the air tab then, finally. Let's start out with the... I'm not sure if the filter system still works. I was going to say start with the fighter, so we're going to have to do a bit of picking and choosing here. MiG-21 BIS. Decent air-to-air range for 45 points. This 6.3 kilometer range is, well, it might seem like a lot, but it's not really that much. Especially when you're looking at the NATO aircraft, which generally have an 8 kilometer air-to-air missile. It does, however, do a decent amount of damage, and they're all fire and forgets, which means that, especially against helicopters, these guys might be interesting. But against against airplanes, I'd be hesitant to deploy them. MiG-21 MF, 240mm rocket pod, just 4 of them. Lots of HE, very, very fast. Look at that, 1600 kilometers per hour. Jesus. Oh, they have one drawback. Time over target's 35 seconds. This thing is pretty much a fly in once, get your rockets on target and get the hell out. And hope that you can outrun the the AA missile or the SAM that's being fired at you. That, in tandem with that 20% ECM, might be enough to keep it alive, but I rather doubt it. MiG-23 MF, and I'm also going to cover the 98 version of it. Both anti-air warfare units, or fighters as we call those. The range on the 70-pointer is significantly better than what you're getting with the 23 MF. You're also paying a little bit more for that. You're getting that same 1600 kilometers per hour speed. 30% ECM versus 15. You're going to notice that. Especially with these missiles trying to crit hit you every step of the turn, or every single step of the way. The less you get hit, the better. Of course, that goes for every aircraft, but 30 ECM is still on the lower end of the spectrum. And I hope that some of their other aircraft make up for this. Something like this makes up for it. MiG-29 M2. Good long-range air-to-air missile, but they only carry 2. They carry 4 shorter range air-to-air at a range of 4.2 clicks, 45% ECM, very good time over target. Turn radius means that they're probably going to be able to turn in time to get those shorter range missiles away. And with 1100 kph you won't be really outrunning anti-air missiles, but at least you might make a chance against them. Let's see, the Su-22 M4 anti-tank plane. Normally I would call it an anti-tank sniper, but again, with all the APS, the effectiveness of these things is limited. They have 28 AP, so if it does hit, you're going to do a lot of damage, but the APS combined with a 20% ECM and a 750 kilometer speed means that I would not really pick this thing as a primary anti-tank weapon. Syria 30 at the same low speed is not stellar either. It does a little bit more damage, and its weapons are fire and forget, the KH-29D when compared to the KH-25ML, which is not fire and forget. And in case you don't find this thing to be effective enough, you can go for the Su-27 SKM. 4.2 kilometer fire and forget anti-tank missiles. You're sacrificing 1 point of AP, you're getting 2 missiles extra, and you have 50% ECM with more speed versus 35%, 750, and a lower turn rate or a higher turn radius. They both carry a couple of, well, sort of self-defense-ish R-74A air-to-air missiles. Su-22 M4P, this is your seed aircraft. Unfortunately, they don't have jammers, which means that while that 6 kilometer anti-radiation missile might look good, let's say, I don't know, you're fighting France. And France has decided to deploy the Roland against you. This is not even one of the best AA weapons that you can find against you. But let's say that they deployed this. This missile will fire back at you before you get a missile out on it. This means that it's going to be in trouble. While it does have 40% ECM and good speed, 1450, let's make that very good speed, it still might struggle to survive. Whereas if you're looking at US aircraft, I've been using the the Prowler a lot. These jamming pods are fantastic because they make the aircraft so much more survivable because they just panic and shut down the enemy radar. And then they throw on an 8 kilometer range seeker missile. Anyway, the Polish don't have that. It's potentially a bit lacking, this thing. A couple of bombers, because we haven't seen those yet. Su-7B drops 6 500 kilogram bombs. Speed's quite low, 750. Autonomy, or sorry, not autonomy, but ECM, 20%. Not very good. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a one-way jet, a throwaway. Su-7B, same version, napalm bomber. And then the Su-20. This thing, again, same amount of ECM, just 20%, same speed, 750. This thing drops both HE and AP bombs, but this is the only cluster bomber that you have. And especially with Ashen Shadows, I found that cluster bombers are generally a bigger threat to my tanks than HEGM planes. Because my tank can defend itself against your KH-29D with APS, but those RBK 500s with 6 AP will go right through the top, and they're always going to do damage. But again, this thing might not come back. You're really going to have to escort it with a few more aircraft. Overall, I'd say that the Polish have some pretty decent infantry, especially when I'm comparing it to Canada, which is the previous deck review that I did. I'd say that Canada has far better infantry. Tank section, you're getting pretty much the same. You don't really have a very high AP tank or a very heavily armored tank. And your ATGM infantry doesn't make up for that gap. The Concourse at 20 and the Faggot at 16, you just don't have something that hits for 25. Unless you're talking close range. One other thing that I haven't found. Oh, never mind. Yeah, they have the Nona. This one. This is their mortar. Is that their only mortar? Yeah, that's their only mortar. That could be a problem. With just one mortar that has a good rate of fire, but not as good as some of the others, throwing up a smoke screen to allow your infantry to get closer could be a real challenge. Helicopters are alright. Still not that good. This is a very decent helicopter for 45 points. Quite capable, potentially, of taking out enemy armor, but still be quite careful with it because it's so easy to shoot down. I think overall the Polish AT capability is lacking. For AT you may have to rely a little bit more on something like this. The BM-27. Top attack, cluster munitions, range 35 clicks. These will soften up enemy armor, maybe allowing your infantry to take care of it. Or those heavier tanks. And as for the rest, I think it's a bit more strength in numbers, which really isn't my playstyle, but it might be yours. Anyway, that's it for this deck review. Please continue voting in the description link down below, where it says vote for the next deck review. And with that, you can still influence what country is going to be next. They're all pretty close, the votes, so you can still have a real impact there. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Polish deck down below in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next installment of the Second Korean War. See you then.